Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry Presents. So far I have recorded almost 60 segments about world famous poets, their lives and their beautiful poetry. So please don't forget to visit my channel, you can learn a lot, and don't forget to like and subscribe. In the past my segments were pretty long. Some of them were 20 minutes, 27 minutes, so I decided to make my segments shorter. The idea is for people to learn about poets and listen to their poetry, and if they really enjoy them, they can explore their art, their poetry on their own and learn more about them. But my segments give you quite a full picture of the lives of these poets, both personal and professional. So in the past we talked about, in the past segments we discussed romantic poets, most of them from England and some from America. Then we talked about two German poets, Friedrich Schiller and Goethe. And today we're traveling to France, and we will be talking about a wonderful writer, not just a poet, but he was also known as a poet, to the surprise of some people, whose name is Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo is the famous writer who wrote the Hunchback of Notre-Dame. And we will discuss his life and some of his poetry. He was not only a novelist, but one of the greatest poets of all times, a man whose words captured the beauty, pain, and hope of human life. He was born in 1802 in Besançon, France, and he became a central figure of romanticism and a powerful voice for justice and compassion. Let's talk a little bit about Victor Hugo's childhood. His childhood was far from simple, and the fact that it was far from simple deeply shaped his imagination. His father was a general during the Napoleonic Wars, often away at war. His mother was deeply religious, and she was politically a royalist. Because of this, Hugo grew up between two opposing worlds: military discipline and emotional sensitivity. He traveled frequently as a child, living in Italy and in Spain. These early journeys exposed him to different cultures, landscapes, and languages, enriching his imagination. Even as a boy, Hugo showed extraordinary talent. At age 14, he wrote in his notebook, "I want to be Chateaubriand or nothing." This bold statement revealed his early ambition to become a great writer. Hugo began writing poetry as a teenager, and by the age of 20, he had already published his first collection. His early poetry reflected royalist beliefs that were influenced by his mother, admiration for tradition and religion, classical structure and style, but as he matured, his writing evolved, becoming more emotional, bold, and socially aware. Victor Hugo was incredibly disciplined and creative. He wrote daily. He revised obsessively. He believed inspiration must be supported by hard work, so he spent many hours a day writing. He was very serious about his craft. Interestingly, Hugo sometimes locked away his clothes so he wouldn't leave the house, forcing himself to write. His creative work spanned many forms. He wrote poetry, novels, plays, political essays, even drawings. He was a talented visual artist. He wrote Les Misérables, a story of redemption, justice, and human dignity. He also wrote, as I mentioned before, The Hunchback of Notre-Dame, a powerful tale of love, isolation, and compassion set in the medieval Paris. His writing blends storytelling with deep moral questions, making readers reflect on society and humanity. Although many people know him for his novels, I already mentioned that he was also one of the greatest poets of the time. His major poetry collections include Les Contemplations, deeply, I'm sorry, my pronunciation, I don't speak French, so it might be wrong, a deeply emotional collection reflecting on love, memory, and grief, especially after the death of his daughter. We'll talk about it a little later. Another one was called Les Châtiments, a fierce political work criticizing injustice and tyranny, and La Légion des Siècles, an ambitious poetic vision of human history and progress. And again, forgive me for my faulty pronunciation. The tragic death of his daughter Leopoldine, Hugo transformed into he expressed in his poetry. His writing, his poetry became more personal, more philosophical, filled with longing, sorrow, and spiritual reflection. One of his most famous poems, called Tomorrow at Dawn, which I will read to you later, expresses a father's quiet grief as he walks to visit his daughter's grave. Victor Hugo's love life was as intense and complex as his poetry. It was filled with deep devotion, heartbreak, long-lasting passion, and emotional contradictions that deeply influenced his writing. He was a man of many loves. And I think poets, a lot of poets are like that because they constantly need inspiration for their work. Victor Hugo was known to have many romantic relationships throughout his life. As a man, he was very charismatic, passionate, deeply emotional, and he believed in love as powerful, almost sacred force. But he also struggled with faithfulness and desire. This duality makes his love life both fascinating and human. He was very devoted on one hand, but on the other hand, he always felt this longing, and he felt longing, and I would say restlessness. Hugo experiences love in different ways, and he writes about love differently. He describes love as a devotion, love as loss, love as struggle and conflict, love as spiritual connection beyond time. In works like Les Misérables, that I'm sure a lot of you know, love appears in many forms. It's a romantic love, it's a parental love, it's a sacrificial love. And Victor Hugo once wrote, Life is a flower of which love is the honey. Victor Hugo married his childhood friend Adele Faucher in 1822. At first, their relationship was loving and supportive. Adele believed in Hugo's talent and stood by him as his literary career flourished. They had 5 children together, and Hugo appeared to live the life of a devoted husband and father. But with the time, their marriage became strained. Adele grew distant from Hugo. She even had an affair with Hugo's close friend, Charles Augustin Sainte-Beuve. This betrayal deeply wounded Hugo, but he himself wasn't entirely faithful either. Their marriage gradually turned into more of a formal partnership than a romantic life. But the greatest love of Hugo was a woman whose name was Juliette Drouet. In 1833, Hugo met actress Juliette Drouet, and this meeting changed his life forever. Juliette became his lifelong companion, his emotional anchor, his most devoted admirer, and their relationship lasted for 50 years. Juliette gave up her acting career to dedicate herself almost entirely to Hugo. She followed him into exile, supported his work, and wrote him thousands of letters, many of them filled with love and longing. Hugo, in return, supported her financially, visited her regularly, and trusted her with manuscripts and personal matters. Despite his other affairs, Juliette remained loyal and constant, often described as the great love of his life, as I already mentioned before. One of the most, as we discussed previously, the most devastating emotional event in Hugo's life was the death of his daughter. His daughter Leopoldine drowned in 1843. This tragedy changed him profoundly, but not only changed him, but also affected his writing. When Napoleon III rose to power, Hugo opposed him and was forced into exile, and he stayed in exile for 20 years away from France. His writing became more universal, philosophical, and his voice became stronger and freer. So exile became one of his most productive periods, creative periods. There are a few interesting facts that I wanted to tell you. Victor Hugo wrote 30,000 lines of poetry. He believed poets were guides for humanity. He also had a photographic memory. He influenced writers, artists, and even political movements. And his funeral, when he passed away in 1885, at the age of 83 in Paris, and he passed away peacefully, his funeral was attended by millions of people. So he actually, during his lifetime, became a national hero of France. But unfortunately, like everybody grows old, his health started to decline, and he finally died on May 22nd, 1885. So his body was placed under the Arc of Triumph before burial. He was laid to rest in the Pantheon reserved for France's greatest figures. And we will read a couple of his poems. The first one, as I promised, is called Tomorrow at Dawn. Tomorrow at dawn, at the hour when the countryside whitens, I will depart. You see, I know that you await me. I will go through the forest. I will go across the mountain. I cannot remain far from you any longer. I will walk with my eyes fixed on my thoughts, without seeing anything outside, without hearing any noise, alone, unknown, my back bent, my hands crossed, sad, and the day for me will be like the night. I will not look at the gold of the falling evening, nor at the distant sails descending toward Harfleur. And when I arrive, I will place on your grave a bouquet of green holly and flowering heather. And a second poem is called If You're Leaving. It's a tender poem of love, longing, and separation. Since I am leaving, and since you are staying, since I must go far from you, my beloved, let your soul follow me Let it accompany me. Let it be with me wherever I may go. When I feel alone, when sorrow surrounds me, when the road is dark and hope seems gone, I will close my eyes and feel your presence like a gentle light that leads me on. Love is not bound by distance or time. It lives in silence. It breathes in the heart. And even when two souls are apart, love remains unbroken, divine. And with these lines, we come to the end of this segment. I hope you enjoyed learning about Victor Hugo and his timeless poetry. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.